Can you hear a car?
Occasionally.
You can dabble with that. Okay.
Yeah,
All
sorry.
right.
It just
All right.
sounds like we're in a scene from, Sun Hill 1998. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, somebody breaking into a car around the corner.
Yeah.
No, it's stopped now. They've made off with it. They've gone with it. Yet again, I failed at my job.
Hello, this is Ben Payton, and you are listening to the Bill Podcast. Brought to you in association with GeorgeFairbrother.com, McGoldrickWatchRepairs.com, and Misty Moon Events. For over 60 hours of exclusive The Bill-related content, including reunion highlights, cast and crew commentaries, reaction videos, pilgrimage location videos, off-the-beat bonus podcasts, and much more. Join the investigation from £2.49 a month at patreon.com/The Bill Podcast.
The staging of a production is glorious, isn't it? Because you've got stuff going on in the foreground and then the background. And
yeah, Ellen's got an award for that set.
I mean, yes, so I read. Yeah.
And I think when I saw her actually, when she came into on the first day of rehearsals, and we met the people, doing costume and design and lighting and all of that. We had a Zoom meeting with the lighting person who was looking at when she unveiled the little model of the set. It really moved me. I really felt quite tearful that it was that somebody had really sort of had a vision, and such a simple vision, because the play is not, there's not a huge amount of money in the play. The way that the books being scattered around and the furniture being used and stuff to try and create this kind of environment of the trenches, what have you. And I just thought, well done, theatre is such a wonderful thing, because you're expecting and hoping that the audience will come on a little make-believe trip with you, jump over the other side of the sofa with you and pretend it's French or something,
I felt so immersed in it, and I felt that you as a company of actors were immersed in that make-believe and bringing it to life to us, and it felt a very energized production. I'm just thinking in terms of people who haven't seen the play, would you mind giving us the story of where this story has come from and a little bit about Neville's background?
So the play is set it begins in 1910 at Balliol College, Oxford University. It's about a feud between Etonians and, as they would call them, the plebs, who weren't Etonians. Going back now to Mr. Johnson, but it's a true story. So it's a true story, and all of the characters in it are for real, and all of them are on the boards and things when you walk around Balliol. We went to Balliol on the first weekend of rehearsals. And it's about this bitter feud between a guy actually from Northwest, from Liverpool area, came down from a banking family who earns his way through education into going to Oxford University, who's very, very, becomes very, very involved in a boys' club that is formed to help poor kids, in the Oxford area. And how the crazy behaviour of 18 Etonians in 1910 who were admitted in the freshers intake of 53, 18 were Etonians. And so they just pushed everyone out of the societies and things, and, these kind of Dead Poets Society type things, and sort of committees, what have you, and clubs, what have you. And nobody else was allowed in, because all these Etonians would say, no, not from Eden. You're not important. You're not part of it. No. And that feud continues into the dark days of the Great War, in Ypres. And Neville Talbot, my character, is very much the mediator. And so it's interesting that, just going back to what I was saying about being a therapist, is that, that was his role. Because when I was there, I met the current dean of Balliol College. And I said, what did he do? What's their role? What has been my role? And she said, well, you'd be very much the counsellor and mediator and therapist for all these, 19-year-old, 20-year-old guys, who've got problems and stuff, and they need pastoral care. As I say in the play, I came to this college to provide pastoral care and help the flower of youth of this country. I become the chaplain of the 3rd Battalion of the Rifle Brigade. as does Billy Grenfell, becomes a second lieutenant, and Keith Ray. These are the protagonists in our story. Also, there's a character in it who is very much a mediator as well, who was kind of on the fence between the two, but his heart really, and this is all taking place in the time of the Liberals are in power, and Lloyd George has come up with this crazy scheme, which I think in an ideal word is perfect, to tax landowners, and he calls it the people's budget. And of course, all the landowners of the House are the Lords, so the House of Lords block it. And of course, the suffragettes, and a lot of unrest and rioting and, lots of social unrest and stuff. So it's on the backdrop of that. And, there is a lot of relevance to the story now. So I'm on the fence with it. But, the thing is, at the end of the day, I have to think, well, my character, he wants to keep his job, Unfortunately, Billy Grenfell, his mother is one of the richest women in England, and his father, Lord Grenfell, who's climbed the Matterhorn and swum the Atlantic and done all these amazing things, and become MP for Salisbury, and then Baron Desborough, this, that, and the other, total, utterly privileged kind of on another level. He's a benefactor of the college, so I can't send his son down or reprimand him in a way because I'll lose my job. And so the thing is, it's all very well being kindly and lovely Christian chaplain and friend to everyone, but I don't want to lose my job. I'm in this really difficult position where I've just been barracked and pushed by this feud, and particularly by Keith Ray, is always coming to me saying, send him down, send Billy down. I can't work under these circumstances because he's doing these crazy things and trashing the place and trashing restaurants and coming back and bringing girls back, this, that, and the other. And I want to get on with my duty to the Balliol Boys Club and my work. And, I'm a good Christian scholar and it's affecting everyone. And but it's a true story. And there's another character in it called Ronald Poulton, who was a rugby player who at that time was a big name up and coming in the England rugby union side. So obviously he played for Oxford, and he played for Harlequins, and he has a plaque in Westminster Abbey. In simple terms, it's about, for me, it's about duty and commitment to, all of the students in the, but I'm torn. Well, I'm not, because actually Neville Talbot, whose father was the Bishop of Leeds, who's actually born in Oxford when his father was chaplain. I'm the chaplain of Balliol College. I actually served throughout the First World War. And as a line I have in it, I say, I should have been a stretcher bearer, because that's what Jesus Christ would have been. He certainly wouldn't have been an officer, having people salute him and all of that. But all I do is bury men day after day. That's all I do. And so this man who was not particularly good at sport, but really enthusiastic and loved rugby, really into rugby, loves Ronnie Fulton. Well, that's my choice. Very enthusiastic, quite unorthodox. Apparently the character, he was actually 6'6", so I'm sort of 6 inches shorter than him, towering man, huge man, who, he's probably, his head would have been out the trenches, walking along. But he survived the war. He died in 1943. I became Bishop of Pretoria. It's an interesting story. The first half is very much Oxford, second half is Ypres.
It was a timeless drama, isn't it? And it will always be so, the idea of that, because it's the First World War, all their problems, all their squabbles, all their feuds become irrelevant in the bigger picture, yet we still care about those people and what they cared for, and they've got to put it all aside. And that's like, that kind of drama is always going to have an impact. Yeah,
I mean, it's something that, a lot of things I've been watching just to find that tone, sort of Edward, or the Englishness. It's about that as well. It's about the class system, which is always a massive deal in this country, and it always will be. Well, certainly in my lifetime, I think. I've been hothousing myself with things like Remains of the Day, Shadowlands. I've really got into Anthony Hopkins of late, just to see, and I haven't really taken him in that much, apart from the obvious film. Well, I suppose they are the obvious films, but they're so amazing. But then, of course, 1917, and also the film, which I think is fantastic, with somebody I went to Drama Centre with, Paul Bettany, Journey's End. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's worth watching. There's so much to draw from. in terms of what were these people like. It's Edwardian England, which is very different from Victorian, which is very different from the 20s, which is very different from, with a war in between and stuff, changes the face and stuff. It's fascinating. I mean, I don't think you can ever do too much work.
No.
In terms of like, what were the people about? What were they like? I think I've only, we've got 11 more performances of the play. And I feel like I've just started to scratch in below the surface of it.
It's a very pure, tender performance and truthful. And I believe that I was there with you in every moment.
Oh, thank you.
But I was watching, Neville, I wasn't watching Iain Fletcher, and I hope you take that as a compliment. It's intended, I was in the world.
Yeah, thank you.
Because it's a responsibility bringing to life someone who lived, isn't it? A real person.
Yeah, it is. But do you know what? With Hugh, and I said this to him when I had the first meeting with this play, I said, you know what? He said, well done with that scene. And the scene that I read was the scene that I'm reprimanding Billy actually in the train, which I don't want to do. But Neville Talbot doesn't want to do, because his heart is, he doesn't want to hurt any of these people, but he's had enough of these, King Toffs. And how dare you bring it into the trenches when people are getting their heads blown off left, right and centre, and, But I've had to really discover that through performance, because I don't think, even after 20, 30 performances of a play, you've got to treat every performance as not a rehearsal, but a still an exploration. Otherwise, the audience are not getting what they deserve, I think. You've got to keep working. Don't give up on anything. And if there's one thing that isn't quite work, just work for that, and the rest will come. I just heard yesterday, Simon Russell Beale was directed in a play by Sam Mendes. And the play ran for quite some time, and Sam Mendes had to leave the production because he was off doing, directing film or what have you. And he was on the other side of the world. And the associate director got in touch with Sam Mendes, and the play had been running for maybe 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever it is, I don't know. He said, the play's getting a bit baggy. It's losing its something. The actors are aware of this, and they want to know. They want some notes. They need some notes from them. And he left a note, or sent a note each week whilst the play was still running. And to Simon Russell Beale, he said, whatever the character, I forget what the play was and what it was now, but he just said, when did your character take his last drink? Before the first scene or whatever it was, or when did your character last have a scan, or so, you know what I mean? So that it just immediately put something else into your head about some detail that you could bring on. And it said, and what happened, it totally freshened up the play again, just from a couple of little simple notes here and there. But it's not something you can play with a funny walk or a whatever, but it's just something there, which I think every actor has a duty to try and create. Yeah, I always try to do that with Rod Skase, actually. But he didn't really end up where I intended him.
Let's go on that journey, because I mean, where did you first discover the acting bug? How did it begin for you? And there weren't any performing genes in your family, am I right?
My father was an engineer. My mother was a mother at home. My mother much more interested in film, theatre and stuff, just Sunday afternoons watching Dr. Zhivago or whatever, in the days when it was just there all the time, BBC or whatever, late night films and stuff, And my father actually did go to Oxford. He went for 1 year. He did maths and physics. I think he was a little bit on the spectrum, Asperger's and things. My parents are not with us anymore. My father died 6 years ago. My mother 8 years ago. Down on the south coast, right near Brighton, not far from Chris Ellison, actually.
Ah, cool.
Right, he was really kind to me. My first duty as an actor in the bill, I went to the Brighton Metropole Hotel for some big Lord's Taverners gala dinner charity event. There was a casualty table, a bill table, a between the lines table, a London's Burning table, a soldier table. You remember those?
Yeah.
And I was and I had to wear black tie, and I went with my partner, and I lived in Brighton at the time. And I remember Chris Ellison, he said, "So you're new in the show, are you?" And he'd left it by then, because the new DS was Sally Johnson. And he said, if you want any advice, he said, when you go and just go and impersonate your favourite actors. He said, that's all I'd ever do. Steve McQueen, Clint Eastwood, or what, from his.
Oh, wow.
All right, okay, that's a good one. So, so the first 6 months, I don't know what the hell I was doing. But anyway, I was kind of, one of them, can I do Brian Cant from Play School? But no, I went to Worthing Technical College. My father basically press ganged me into doing a 2-year business studies course. And all I learned to do was recreational things and running around chasing the girls on my course stuff, you know what I mean? Put it politely. And after the first year, I did the exams. The head of the course and the principal of the college, Worthing Technical College, said, we're not inviting you back for the second year. I said, okay. They said, why are you doing this course? You're able to do it, but you're not interested in the slightest, are you? And I said, well, and I had that one time when I'd had somebody speak to me, and it wasn't a kind of like a school teacher telling me off sort of way. It was a real curiosity with me. And I remember thinking, I've got a choice here. What do I say? Do I just say, oh, I'll try harder or whatever, and maybe I can carry on and they'll let me, I don't know. But I just said, no, I'm not. I just had this rush of blood to the head. And I just thought, I've got the opportunity to just be really honest. And they said, why are you doing the course? And I said, well, my father told me to do it. And they looked at each other and looked back at me and said, yes, we understand. We're not going to put a black mark by your name if you need a grant for any other course in this county, in West Sussex. And I went straight back to home in Littlehampton, which is where Mark Wingett used to keep his fishing boat.
Oh, wow.
Unbeknownst to me at that point, and I think the bill would have started by then. 1984 it started, didn't it?
Yeah.
But Mark, obviously, he was doing it. This was about 88. And I went back and met my mate Garth, who was sitting on the beach as a lifeguard, smoking something interesting. And he passed it to me, and I sat down and he said, what's wrong? I said, I got kicked out. I can't tell my dad. And he said, well, what are you going to do then? He said, why don't you do a drama course at Chichester? Yeah, okay, I had to think about it. And I did, and I went along and I did the obvious Richard III speech. And the other thing, you could do a song. And I didn't know any musical theatre. So I decided to do a song called 5 Years, which was by David Bowie's song on the Life and Times of Ziggy Stardust, the opening track with the drum pad. And I've recruited this amazing elderly pianist who lived in Littlehampton called Joan Last to play the piano backing track. And I recorded it on my ghetto blaster and took it in with him, put it down. And I sang the song and I did that. And then I got onto this course at Chichester. And then Chichester, we had this crazy and lovely acting teacher called Alan Avis, who, his job, what he wanted everyone to get into drama school. Lambda, RADA, all these ones. And I was, my contemporaries were somebody you might be familiar with, an actor who's done quite a few bills, actually, an actor called Paul Putner. And Paul Putner, brilliant comic actor. He works a lot with Stuart Lee and does a lot of writing for Radio 4, this, that, and the other. And he was always in Little Britain.
Yes.
And also he did the Rock and Chips, I think it was called, the prequel to,
Only Fools, yeah.
And he does lots of different things. He works with Peter Serafinowicz, how to pronounce his name. But he was a year above me. Anyway, I went along and did a 2-year Theatre Arts Foundation course. Cut a long story short, I did the course. That was good, but I kept coming up to London to see a girlfriend of mine, so bunked it a lot. But I didn't actually get into a drama school when I was there. I just came up to London and started tearing tickets at the Wyndham's Theatre and all of the other theatres in what was called the Maybox Theatre Company, watching wonderful plays. One of them really stood out was the Secret Life of Sherlock Holmes with Jeremy Brett and Edward Hardwicke.
Oh, wow.
And Jeremy Brett kind of always supported me and took an interest because I was auditioning for drama schools. And he said, make sure you get on with a good voice teacher. And if you need anything, I'll write a letter to back you up and stuff. And I saw Serious Money, Carol Churchill play fantastic with Gary Olson in it. Remember Gary Olson?
Yeah. He started on the bill.
Yeah, he did. Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I forgot that, but I remember seeing a picture of him on the walls in the thing. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
you're damn right. Yeah, of course. That started at the Royal Court Theatre with Gary Oldham was doing it, and it was directed by Max Safford Clark. And then I saw Richard Harris doing Henry the Fourth, a Pirandello play there, and lots of wonderful, and The Secret Life of Sherlock Holmes, lots of different things, Stephen Burkoff and things. And I was like really still wanting, I knew I wanted to be an actor, and that was when I found out about Drama Centre because of the Simon Callow book, Being an Actor. And that was it. I went to Drama Centre when in 1991. Fabulous time. Scared every day.
Really?
Not
Wow.
failing every day, because it was the first time I really felt I was reading any decent literature or plays or anything, or reading properly and in control, and really thinking I'm learning a craft, and I'm learning stuff that I couldn't ever have. Just coming from Chichester, going up to Drama Centre and having that kind of background, and Christopher Fettis and Jaap Malmgren. Jaap Malmgren was a partner with a professional partner with Rudolf Laban from Sweden, who created this work called Movement Psychology, that they were working with Maggie Smith and Sean Connery back at the end of the 50s, early 60s, when Connery actually went and screen test for Bond. And Maggie Smith and Christopher had worked doing a lot of theatre. Actually, after I'd left Drama Centre, I gate crashed a talk from Anthony Hopkins, who came to Drama Centre and talked to the school about his career, and very honest about his life and his relationship with alcohol in the early days, and when he realised he'd had to stop before Hannibal Lecter and all of that. But he always said that he based his Hannibal Lecter on Christopher Fettis, our principal. Who was able to just sit there in a way and just make you feel everybody in the room as if he's talking to them, and you feel like Clarice Starling, and Christopher, a very scary man. But if I hadn't gone to Drama Centre, I don't think I would have lasted, because I don't think I would have been disciplined enough. Because the Drama Centre approach was very much like a kind of European conservatoire approach. And it was one of the three schools which were a little bit against the usual kind of English sort of drama school approach. East 15 being one, just down the road, Epping, which was made up from Drama Centre students who left, and also Arts Educational, which is down in Chiswick. But so when the bill came along, and I'd been up for maybe a couple of villains in the bill, and I hadn't got them. I was living down in Brighton at the time, just along from where Laurence Olivier used to live, on the seafront. And I got the bill, and then suddenly I was in a totally different world, because, Drama Centre sort of really taught you the theatre, classical theatre, and Stanislavski and Strasbourg. We were very lucky. We had an acting teacher who used to teach, who was a student and also did teach at the Actors Studio in New York. So his contemporaries were Peter Falk, Columbo, and John Cassavetes, who was in Rosemary's Baby and Dirty Dozen. But these guys were all off-Broadway kind of actors and stuff. And that 50s and 60s, he used to teach. And we all think that maybe Peter Falk based his Columbo on this guy. And his name was Reuven, fantastic acting teacher. He used to smoke like a chimney. Not in the classes, but he would if he could have. But he'd always say, "So what do you want? What do you want? Where you come from? What do you want?" And everything. And he'd always be outside smoking with all the students. So he'd go back in and you'd work on one line in a scene for an hour and a half or something.
Wow.
And building things. And it was like the real deal, So the bill coming along was like going into another world where you're still mixing with lots of the great thing about the bill and Casualty, and things like Soldier and London's Burning, is that those shows were such great employers of young actors coming out of drama school in front of the camera, and you get these things on your CV, I worked with some great, loads of fantastic actors. I did an episode where I had to arrest Ray Winston. I did an episode with me and Simon Rouse and Ray Winston. And this was before he did Nil by Mouth, and he hadn't been working for quite some time. And suddenly I'm working with Ray Winston. I knew him from Quadrilogy, of course, and then they knew each other, Mark and thing in the green room, they were talking stuff. But I worked with same people like Tim McInnery, who's a fine actor doing it. And also I worked with I didn't do any scenes with him, but I was in the same episode and spent a bit of time talking with Rick Mail. Came in and did a three-part or something.
Yeah, that's Humpty Dumpty. That story.
That's
was
right.
cool.
Yeah, and you'd see actors come through, and John Sim came in and did something. Sean Harris, if you know Sean Harris.
Yeah,
they were in my year. Craig Kelly and all my contemporaries. And Stuart Lang, who did the live episode, a very good friend of mine from Drama Centre, who did that live episode. And I now live in Tunbridge Wells, so I'm living close to Stephen Hartley.
Oh, cool! Yeah, another wonderful actor.
Stephen Hartley, I can't believe it. Right down there. I love Stephen. I've never worked with him, but I know him because he knows Mark and all of that. And so I've been kind of it's been, in terms of like talking to you, I've been wanting to do it for a long time, but haven't been in the right place.
Bless you.
Really, just because I don't want to go, hey, this is great, but it's like, because I want to be really honest with you. And I think even right at the beginning, when I know that you came to see the play and you said such lovely things. And I really feel like you kind of got it, what I'm trying to do in it.
I hope you do continue down this path. I mean, I know you'd also make a great, because that was the thing meeting Greg. Well, I thought Greg was a wonderful actor, and he's a fantastic therapist. He's helped someone very close to me in real life, actually.
Oh, that's great.
He became a client.
Yeah.
And but like something, so when I think of Greg's interview, I mean, he talked so warmly about his time living with you, and he could still remember your cats' names, and but he like something a few of the people who listened to his podcast commented on as well. It was like, he was a young man. This is before getting a bill. He was working part-time in a pizza restaurant. And he said, I just remember being really happy. Like, I was working part-time in this pizza place. I had good friends. I had a roof over my head. Life was good, And and he said, then when you go down the acting road, and he said, I just remember around the time where he gave up, he was like, you're busting a gut and you're putting everything into whether you're going to get this episode of Doctors or not. Yeah. And he was like, do I really want to have my mental health surrounded by, am I going to get this Doctors or not? Or do I want to take control and have, something else? And it's
exactly that. I mean, Oliver, I remember when, I had a really lovely time in the bill. I had really fond memories of the bill, but I needed enough space and time between. And talking to somebody, it well enough, you know it very well. I'm really touched that you came to see the play. I really appreciate that. I really do. Honestly do. That's great. That's fantastic. But I remember when I'd been doing the bill for maybe 2 years, I met John Sim, who I knew very well from Drama Centre, and we were in the same year. And he'd been doing the Lakes back then, yeah. And we met at this kind of some event, some awards thing, something. And he said, Fletch, when are you going to do something else? You've not done it long enough. And I'm like, yeah, but I've just signed a contract for. And he said, well, no, don't do that, man. You never do anything else. And I remember thinking, I was really chuffed that he felt that for me. But also I just thought, well, I'm learning and I'm not ready to go out and do anything else at the moment. And the bill is it's a safe place. I mean, it's not like you could just phone it in. No, because we had an executive producer who was really, if you didn't like someone, you're out. He would prevented actors going off and doing things like Noel's house party and stuff. Well, having said that, I mean, didn't Graham and Andy, but the whole thing of going off and doing panto and this, that, and the other, Michael Chapman really didn't like it. And I think he had very strict rules with it. And, I'm from an era in the bill that I'm really proud of being part of that era, but the bill did change. I think it really changed, and different producers, and it really showed how a producer's attitude to think that they can make it, they've got to have music or whatever, and they've got to have everyone jumping into bed with each other and turning it into and make it and serialize it or whatever. I don't think it needed it. What was charming and what was successful with the bill is that you didn't need to watch it from one week to the next or one episode to the next to be entertained by it and into it, because it was like watching one play on its own about the job. And the characters, you'll understand enough about the characters. And then if you don't see the next episode and the next one, you see another one 2 or 3 weeks later, it doesn't matter. You can still get drawn into that story. And I'm really glad that I was in that era.
Hello, this is Ben Payton, and you have been listening to the Bill Podcast, produced and presented by Oliver Crocker, with special thanks to Iain Fletcher. Co-produced by Ben Adams, Sarah Kuiper, Malcolm McLeod, Alex Mockler, Laura Pinney-Fay, and Simon Wolfe. Executive produced by Ben Ashmore, Daniel Christopher, Alana Dewar, Andrew Dyack, Paul Dunn, Dan Evans, George Fairbrother, Luke Hegarty, Edward Kellett, James Ledane, Simon McGoldrick, Lucy McNeil, Gary Moncur, Stuart and Jen Morris, Claire Norbury, Justin Pitt, Tom Sherrington, Angel Stannard, Patrick Stratford, Michael Weil and Sarah Wendt. Brought to you in association with GeorgeFairbrother.com, McGoldrickWatchRepairs.com and Misty Moon Events. For over 60 hours of exclusive The Bill-related content, including reunion highlights, reaction videos, cast and crew commentaries, pilgrimage location videos, off-the-beat bonus podcasts, and much more, join the investigation from £2.49 a month at patreon.com/The Bill Podcast.